Good to see everybody. I appreciate y'all stopping through, hanging out. I'm trying to get back to doing this live thing again. Use chainsaw so much that I learned that a dull chain is hard work. Yeah, it is, Lars. It is. It is. It is. Those first few cuts went really nice, and that last time I went through it, I hit that knot. I'm using 10-degree chains instead of 30-degree. But that saw is kind of it's almost 100 cc's. So I could put a dull blade on there. Literally, I could dull a blade with a file in this saw. It would take longer, but it would still cut. Jerry, what's going on, man? Hey, stained glass guy. Yeah, stained glass guy, Mark. It's it's rotten material, and it ends up being kind of like sand. And if you run a chainsaw blade through sand, it'll dull it like that too. Or if you hit a piece of metal, for example, like a nail in a tree or something like that. But the other thing that happens is a lot of times in little knots, if you imagine, there's nobody ever dusting nature, right? So there's sand in the air, particulate, and it gets in the little knots. Like as trees are healing, here I can show you. I'll show you right here. Here's a maple tree that I cut a limb off of some years ago. Here, let's show you. Why not? So, as the tree's healing up, it has this, this is the healed material and this is the old material. And there's all kinds of little spaces for sand to get, right? And then it completely heals over, and eventually, if this tree lives long enough, it would be completely enveloped, and you would just see a little ripple, in the surface. Here's another example of a knot. So over time, they get enveloped, but they've already got sand and particulate, in them. So that's why. And then like the bark of trees, often I didn't debark these because cherry has pretty thin bark, and also it was pretty attached because these are green trees. But I'll often, like you can see, these trees have been debarked. I debark those because the same thing happens with bark. As days pass and life goes on, sand gets in those little crevices of the bark, and so cutting through bark with anything with a blade will dull your blade. Yeah, stained glass guy. Yeah, no worries, man. I've cut through all kinds of things doing this over the years. I've cut through bullets. I've found patterns of bullets where people had used like target practice on a tree. I found nails. I have a piece of oak that has an entire fence post in it, a metal fence post. It was probably in the ground. Oak tree grew, enveloped the fence post. I came by 100 years later, whatever it was, 150 years later, and milled that tree, and there was strands of barbed wire on a metal rod. So it was, however old it was since barbed wire had been invented. Yeah, but if you can imagine, you don't normally think about it just walking around day to day, but the breeze is blowing right now. So any little dust that gets picked up by the road, on the road, or there's a highway over there, or in nature, just wind blowing hard enough will pick dust up, and when it hits trees, if they've got rough bark, it gets in the little crevices and stuff. So inevitably, yeah, you will dull blades. You will dull metal blades if you cut through that. True story. So yeah, like Lars was saying, ideally what I would do, and I have another chain, ideally what I would do is change the chain out. But on an Alaskan mill, you got to take the mill off, then the bar off, then change the chain, put everything back together. And I've only got 2 cuts left, and it might be, overall time-wise, it might be faster just to make the 2 cuts. And then I don't mess up another chain. I sharpen my own chains. So I'll just sharpen this one when I get done using it. So if I stained glass guy, yes, this particular tree is cherry. Those that I pointed at over there, I'll show you. These are cherry, mostly what Severed Art is doing her guitars and her stuff with. That one is basswood, that one is basswood, those two are poplar. And that's one that I milled last year, that's ash. And the rest of the basswood tree is actually on the other side of it, you can't see it. But there's a stack of ash right there that Ashman is making guitars out of. So you got Ashman, and then you got Eve, and these are Severed Art. So the whole crew pretty much has their, they can use other stuff, of course, but they have their base stuff that they, yeah, taking a minute here, Haley, for sure. Okay, that's a good question, Mark. So the way that works on hardwoods, cherry's a hardwood, so on average, because, like locust is really hard and poplar isn't nearly as hard. So, cherry, maple, walnut, those are in a similar area. But the rule is kind of to air dry it with no kiln or nothing like that, no artificial anything. It's an inch a year plus a year. So these slabs that I'm milling are a little over 2 inches thick. If you measure from the top and the bottom, you meet in the middle, so that's an inch. So they should take about 2 years to dry. And then as you get thicker, that calculation works out, right? If it's 5 inches thick, then it's going to take you 5 years plus a year. So that would be 6. But what I did many years ago was I built a drying shed that's like a tobacco barn. So it's got slats in it. I don't know if you can see those slats, but air will blow through it. You can see through it. And that doesn't heat the wood like a kiln would, but it allows airflow, and it knocks off about 3 months. So I can do in 9 months what it would normally take a year. So these slabs that I'm cutting right now, to get down to where we need them to make them into guitars, is going to be, I don't know how long this tree had been on the ground, but I can tell it's pretty wet. It'll be probably like the fall of next year. They'd start getting about to where you could use them. Now, guitars, the electric guitars, the Telecasters that I'm making, 10-12% moisture content, you're fine. With what I was doing before, the joinery and furniture and stuff that I was doing, you need it between 5 and 8%. You need it even drier. And the drying times I was giving you was to get it to that 5 to 8%. I don't have to go that far these days. I only got to get to 10 to 12 for the guitars. So that knocks another few months off of it. So these could potentially, if depending on the weather this year and how much wind blows and all of that, they could be ready, in a year and a few months, actually. But most likely these will be, and the way that works, I was talking about that earlier. Man, I got into some poison ivy and itching. The way that works is, so about 70% of the moisture in the tree is the living moisture that's carrying nutrients around and stuff like that in the tree. That's the stuff that comes out first. And then the other 30% is on the cellular level. And that's why a lot of wood is sent to a kiln, because you got to heat it to get it to come out faster. Otherwise, it just takes how long it takes, right? The wood on the outside gets drier. That's why you have checking and cracking, right? The wood on the outside gets drier, which wicks the moisture from the inside towards the outside and all of that. Jerry, a lot. I stack it with stickers. Dry, you need dry stickers in between when you're drying it, spacers. And I don't, like some people, like a lot of times what they'll do at a kiln, or what they'll do in other places, is they'll literally strap it down to keep it straight. and then run it through the kiln. Strap it down like on a pallet or whatever, and then run it through a kiln. The problem with that is once you start cutting it or planing it, it starts wanting to move around because it's got all that energy stored in it. What I do is let them dry naturally, so they're not weighted down. There's nothing on top of them other than they're stacked on top of each other. And whatever warpage happens, I just deal with. I mill everything thicker than it needs to be, and I can usually plane the warp out. The pieces that warp too much, I just use them for other things. Cut them into shorter pieces and use them for other things. But yes, I have more loss like that than most people. But I also, even the smallest, tiniest little pieces, go to some friends of mine that have a farm, and they spread them on their fields, and then the different hardwoods deteriorate at different rates, so that fertilizes their field all year long. So we utilize all of it, like all the little bits and pieces. But anyway, once the moisture's gone, once the moisture's out of it, for the most part, they'll stabilize. That, you know, they are what they are. Now there's some differences in that. Obviously, if you took a dry board and threw it out on the ground, it would wick moisture from the ground, and it would accept heat from the sun, and it would ultimately end up cupping. But once it's dry, it's generally pretty stable. Like the kitchen utensils that I make occasionally that I heat bend, if you run them through their dishwasher, they straighten out, right? Because we've added energy into that. When you bend it with the heat, you used energy and forced it on an angle. So when you reintroduce heat and steam to it, it straightens back out. What's up, Mr. Coleman? How you doing? Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. All right, y'all. I'm gonna get back to milling. I appreciate y'all coming in, hanging out, asking questions. Good stuff. Good stuff. One of the I'll add this caveat. One of the reasons I made the decision many years ago to air dry the lumber and accept the extra warpage and all is one of the things that happens when you heat lumber is you lose just a little bit of the color. Some estimates are about 10%. And the other thing that happens to most woods is, depending on how hot you get them, they become a little more brittle. And of course, like I said, I was doing joinery type work, and the more brittle it is, the more chippy it is. So I just air dried everything, and then I didn't have those issues.